Yo, Greg, you ready to do this?
Let's go, Jay. Let's go.
You're listening to The Success Paradigm with your hosts, Jay Atkins and Greg Gray.
Ladies and gentlemen, so here at the Success Paradigm, we get a chance to talk to some really awesome people, Pulitzer Prize winners, judges, faith leaders. And we always say the one that we're going to talk to this time is one of the biggest. And so it's going to be true today, too. So, Robin Sharma, let me just say that again. Robin Sharma is in the same space with us today. And you on the success paradigm. So if you happen not to know who he is, which means probably you should like walk outside or something like that a few more times a week, let me tell you a little bit about who this gentleman is. So Robin Sharma is a globally respected humanitarian who, for over a quarter of a century, has been devoted to helping human beings realize their native gifts. He's the founder, CEO, and chief visionary officer of Sharma Leadership International, Inc., SLI, which is a global consultancy that helps people in various organizations to realize their potential. His clients constitute most of the Fortune 500 companies such as Microsoft, GE, Nike, FedEx, and IBM. He is an internationally acclaimed author of 11 international best-selling books and is a distinguished litigation lawyer. After quitting his profession, he self-published, I should say, his first book, which is kind of cool because that makes us feel like we have a shot at this, Robin. And his mother was the editor of this book. So if my mom is watching this, Mom, you've got a job that's going to start probably in the next 3 or 4 days or so. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Success Paradigm, Mr. Robin Sharma. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you very much. Great to meet you, Greg, and meet you as well, Jay.
So, Robin, on the podcast, we always love to hear about the story. So many people see the glory. So many people see you as an accomplished author, an accomplished attorney in the past. And that's all great, but they really don't know what your journey was to get here. And what I'd like to start with is wherever you're comfortable starting and hearing about some of those failures and successes that have gotten you to this point in your life along this journey to where you are now, inspiring so many people with your words. And I have to say, the last book, The Everyday Hero Manifesto, was one of my favorites. I've told several people, we have a book club.
Absolutely.
This book club that we have, I will tell you, every week, people were never behind. They were always ahead on the book, and the discussions were absolutely phenomenal. And I know that it's been recommended to hundreds of people just because of this book club. But one of the things that I liked the most about this book was how personal it was. And it was a self-reflective book of this journey of how to get through life and overcome fear and believe in yourself. And I just felt very connected to you as an author. And I always tell people when they read a book, the greatest thing about reading a book is you have no ego. And what I mean by that is you're having a conversation with an author and you can actually look in the mirror, self-reflect and say, he's speaking to me. Where if you have a mentor that's one-on-one, there can be some defensiveness and you get offended by that person. And with this book, I felt like I was truly having a conversation with you. And that inspired me so much because I was like, here's this successful person that I put on a pedestal as a very great, accomplished author, and you came down to my level. And so, first of all, before I go any further, you have to pick up this book because I promise you it will change you forever. So what I would like to hear and what I like for our listeners to hear is your story, kind of where it started and where you decided I'm going to be an attorney. And then, you know what? I don't really want to do this anymore. I want to do something bigger and I want to inspire people's lives. So why don't you share that story with us, Robin?
Well, first of all, Jay, thank you for those more than generous words. And you're very kind to say you put me on a pedestal, but I'm more ordinary than you could imagine. I just work very hard. I'm very focused, and I apply a lot of the habits and insights and philosophies and tactics that I talk about in the Everyday Hero Manifesto. But my journey started as a very simple journey. I grew up on the East Coast of Canada, come from very humble beginnings. I sure didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. My parents were immigrants. I didn't really fit into the cool crowd in school. I sort of marched to the beat of my own drummer and my own drum beat. And I loved, just thinking and dreaming and creating. And I had a teacher in grade 5 who was very profoundly influential on me. Her name was Cora Greenaway. I write about her in the book. And she saw something in me that very few people saw in me. And I think that's what great leaders do. They shine a light on people's gifts and talents that they don't even know about. And she just encouraged me, and she really guided me. So I decided I was going to go to law school. Long story short, I went to law school. I became a successful litigation lawyer, drove a beautiful car, lived in a very nice house. The only problem is I'd wake up every morning, I'd go into the bathroom and look at the mirror, and I didn't like the person who was looking back at me. And I think, what's the point of being successful and losing your soul in the process? And so I made a right angle turn, and I started to study the lives of the great women and men of the world. I started to explore meditation and journaling and philosophy and all these different modalities. Made a big change in my own life. Started waking up feeling much more grounded, much more energetic, much more inspired, and much more comfortable in my own skin. Self-published a little book called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. You spoke about it. Mom was my first editor, and my father helped me sell it at Rotary clubs and social clubs.
Wow.
And, just like I said, I self-published it. One day I happened to be in a bookstore. There were 5 books in the bookstore that were there on consignment. My son Colby, who is 28, was about 4 years old at the time. With one arm, I held him up on the counter as I signed the books, because someone once told me, when an author signs his self-published books or her self-published books, the bookstore can't return the books. So I'd always sign my books. And as I was signing these books as a completely unknown author with nothing more than a mighty vision deep in my heart, I saw from the corner of my eye a gentleman in a green trench coat staring at the whole scene. And he just took the whole scene in, and then eventually he walked over to me and he said, "The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, that's an interesting title." I said, "Well, this is my labor of love. I'm a lawyer, but I have this huge dream to get the message out there. And I'm not going to stop until I get it out there." And he said, "Well, it's nice to meet you." He pulled out his business card, and on it said, "Ed Carson, president of HarperCollins." And
oh
two or 3 weeks later, they bought the world rights for $7,500. And that book has gone on to become a massive bestseller, which led me to write other books and speak and consult and mentor and do all the things that I've been very blessed to do. So I think if you're not failing a lot, you're not doing very much. And I think stumbling is the price of ambition.
That is, that story that you just told, Robin, is very, when Jay was talking about earlier about the feeling that all of us got when we're reading Everyday Hero, it's exactly that type of, I was standing behind the guy in the green trench coat when you were just talking. I was like watching the whole thing. And one of the things that, even as you express that part of the story that I think is interesting is that very often, I'm a big fan of Brene Brown as well. And I kept thinking when I was reading your book, I was like, man, she would be really proud of Robin Sharma, and probably vice versa, because it is the transparency and the vulnerability that you express. In fact, in the last book, I think I mentioned to Jay, it was almost like I was reading a book, but it felt like I was reading your journal, almost like you kind of left it out and the rest of us picked it up by accident. And we started reading and getting a chance to kind of walk with you, which I think is what attracted me so much to it and really why I love it so much. One of the things that you just said, that because we have a lot of people that are trying to figure out how to flip the switch. We actually started this podcast right around the same time the pandemic started. And so there were tons of people that we know were listening and watching that were going to have to make that 180 or 90-degree turn, maybe out of what they had always done. And the pandemic, in a strange but wonderful way, gifted them the moment to make that decision where they probably wouldn't have made it on their own. But I know without something like that, people often feel stuck. They're looking in that mirror, and they know to some degree in their heart that they're probably pretending to be someone that they really aren't. What do you, when you feel like what would you say, I should say, to people who feel like they know they're not in the space, that there's something else, but they feel stuck because they're either afraid of this false sense of security with having a job and a regular paycheck and all these other types of things, but they know they're not living who they actually are. What in your journey would you share with them that would help maybe, I don't know, make that mirror trip a little bit better in the mornings?
It's a great question, Greg. The great high wire walker Papa Walenda said, "Life is lived on the wire, the rest is just waiting."
Mm.
I would also say the discomfort of growth is much less dangerous than the illusion of safety. I'll repeat that again because I believe it could be very helpful.
Yes,
The discomfort, the discomfort of growth is much less dangerous than the illusion of safety. And you said it yourself, Greg. You know, we as human beings, we tend towards homeostasis. We want comfort. We want to live our lives in the safe harbor of the known versus go blue ocean towards our ethical ambitions and our personal Mount Everests. But what does it mean to be alive?
right.
I mean, we don't want to spend the best hours of our finest days watching television in the subdivision, living our neighbor's life or mom's life or grandma's life. And so I hope this is making sense, but another way to put it would be, in the end, we find out that doing difficult things leads to an easy life. And interestingly and paradoxically, the consistent doing of easy things makes life hard. So to leave our safe harbor, to lean into our fears, to, as I say in the Everyday Hero Manifesto, that chapter about transcending your fears, as we hug our monsters, we not only create these micro wins that over time lead to a glorious life or a glorious business, but we do the most important thing a human being can do. We use life to allow us to materialize our personal genius. So it's the doing of difficult things, following our ambitions, taking risks, stumbling, getting bloody, getting back up, learning from our experience, never trusting where life is leading us versus allowing the chatter of the ego to keep us small. When we play big with our lives, we actually get to know how far we can go. And personally, I'm not saying I'm any kind of a master, but the thing about a master is they always think like beginners. And so what I try to do in my life is the more progress I make, the more I try to maintain a white belt mentality. You know, this is my 27th year in the field of leadership and personal optimization. I want to get better. I want to serve more people. I don't want to rest on my laurels. I want to see how far I can go. So I'm working harder, studying more, optimizing my craft, trying to stay fit, because I believe on playing a very long game. And when I mentor my clients, like the billionaires, the sports superstars, the entertainment royalty, I remind them that the key to legendary is longevity. See, that's what made Michael Jordan great. He wasn't only in the championship business, he was in the dynasty business. So it's very hard to get to world class for a window, but the real game that the icons play is, how can I be in the game and lead the field for an entire career?
Wow. So that was a lot. I take notes because we're going to do a recap at the end, and I can't write fast enough for all the information that you're giving us, Robin. So, you know, I'm in the coaching field as well as Greg is, and standing in front of audiences, being on virtual meetings, a lot of people hear what you're saying, but they just don't believe in themselves at all. They have no belief because of outside influence, husband, mother, father, friends telling people that it's not possible, you can't accomplish that. So if you have that belief inside of you that's embedded, because one of the things you talk about in your book is when you're a child, be childlike. When you're childlike, anything is possible. My daughter, you talked about can't as a victim in your book, and I've taught my daughter for years she can't say can't. And now when it comes out of her mouth, she's like, oh, I didn't mean to say that. I didn't mean to say that. And I'm like, that's right, because there's no such thing as can't. So the people that believe they can't, or people that have been told that they can't since 11, 12, 9, 8, whatever it is, how would you suggest that living your best self, like you just talked about, overcoming that belief in yourself that so many people have told you that you can't, how do you go about, or how would you suggest people start that journey? Because a lot of people start, but it's a daily thing, right? It's a daily conversation that you have to have within your subconscious mind that you have to overcome it. So, and I'm sure, listen, like you said, you're not a guru, you're a human being. You've gone through all of this, to get to this 27 years of mentoring and helping these people. But people listening, how do they start today to overcome that can't mentality and to start believing in themselves?
Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge you for being a great parent and teaching your child not to say can't, because you're basically teaching your daughter not to swear. I'm sort of joking, but
no, that,
I love that.
yeah.
That makes a lot of
But,
sense.
There's a chapter in the Everyday Hero Manifesto, and it's all about the power of words, and I can't pull it up right now, or I shouldn't say can, but but it's in there pretty early on. And I think we live in a world right now where we forget that words have extraordinary power. When we say someone has cool sneakers, we say, oh, you've got sick kicks. If you blow the audience away on the platform, you say you killed it. If you have an amazing mentoring session, you murdered it. But words mean what words say. And if you look at Gandhi and Mandela, Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, the great ones understand the power of your words. Like Mandela, for example, a great hero of mine, he freed the nation really by his words.
Yeah.
And so words are incredibly powerful. So the question then becomes, and then you talked about faith in yourself. Well, I do believe that no one will believe in you until you first believe in you. And then when you start to believe in you, the world eventually believes in you. So great question. Where do you start? The first thing I would say to all the people who listen to the Success Paradigm podcast would be, you begin with a simple choice to refuse to be a victim anymore. Too many good people on the planet are giving away their power to external circumstances. It's because of the plague, it's because of the economy, it's because of my boss, it's because of my childhood, it's because of where I live, it's because of who I am that I can't materialize my greatness. So it sounds nebulous, it sounds vague, but the starting point, awareness precedes transformation. Awareness precedes transformation. Awareness is the DNA of change. Becoming aware that, I don't like it, but I'm being a victim. I'm using victim speak versus leader talk. I get up late. I spend the best hours of my finest days playing with my phone. I call successful people lucky versus honoring their hard work, grit, resilience, commitment, devotion to mastery. So it starts with awareness. Today, I will refuse to be a victim. There's a whole chapter in the book, The Victim to Hero Leap, that deconstructs the things victims do. They have victims speak. They give away their power to their past. They're always complaining, et cetera, et cetera. Now, after you take a really good, hard look at your victimhood. We all have victimhood. Then starts the hard work of recreating yourself. Every resurrection begins with a crucifixion. You have to be willing to say, I'm going to let go of my former self, experience a death of sorts because I want to become a better me. Once you do that, then you get involved with what I call micro wins. Small, daily, seemingly insignificant improvements, when done consistently over time, lead to stunning results. Small, daily, seemingly insignificant improvements, when done consistently over time, lead to stunning results. How do you create a great life? One micro win at a time. 2 weeks ago, I gave a leadership keynote in Cairo. And after I gave it, the next day I went to the Great Pyramids of Giza, and I was allowed to go inside the pyramid, and the guy had explained the story. He said, the Great Pyramid of Giza, one of the 7 wonders of the world. It took 20 years to build, 20,000 people, and 2,200,000 blocks. We live in a world that wants world class in a day. But the Great Pyramids of Giza, 20 years, 2,200,000 stones, 20,000 workers. A great life is constructed not by revolution, one thing we do because of one seminar. A great life, a world-class company is built by those tiny micro wins that when done consistently over time, create a great life. So what I'm suggesting is world class is less about what you do once in a while, and it's much more about what you do every day. Once you understand that your days are your life in miniature, and what you do every day is creating your future, then it comes to the tactics. We can talk about the 5 a.m. club. We can talk about the victory hour. We can talk about meditation. We can talk about journaling. We can talk about forest bathing. We can talk about cold showers. We can talk about affirmations, visualization, working with an emotional healer, sweat lodges, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Awesome. By the way, the 5 a.m. club was definitely a paradigm shifter for me. And I will, in full transparency, because Brene Brown might see this at some point in time, as soon as I saw 5 a.m. on the cover of that book, the first thought I had was, whoop, can't do that. So is there like a 6 a.m. version or a 6:30 a.m. version? It's funny how quickly, Robin, we make a decision, even unconsciously, about what's not possible. And we're not even aware that's what we're doing. In fact, we sometimes can convince ourselves that we're doing exactly the opposite, that I'm being more reasonable by saying what I can't do. I've got a question for you, and this is going to, you tell me whether it's going too far, Robin, but I've been known to kind of push the limits a little bit, and you're a guy whose soul is right out there where the world can see it. So you were talking about hugging monsters, your monsters, embracing your monsters. Tell us, if you don't mind, about one of the monsters that you hugged or had to embrace, that you knew that was that took things to the next level for you.
Absolutely, I'm happy to answer it. But before I do, you said something very important, which is about the 5 a.m. club. Mm-hmm. And you said, you had a story that you can't do it. And with the 6 a.m. club, if I understood you correctly, would that be more reasonable?
Right.
And, one of my favorite quotes is, I think it's George Bernard Shaw, but it is George Bernard Shaw. And it's the reasonable man, obviously woman too, but I'm expressing what he wrote. The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in adapting the world to himself. Therefore, all progress has been made by the unreasonable person.
By the unreasonable people.
So I would say to anyone who wants to be reasonable, please don't be reasonable with yourself. Be unreasonable with yourself. And because I get that a lot. People who've, they've heard about the 5 a.m. club book. It's grown into a movement. They want to do it. But they say, could I do 7 a.m. I want to be more reasonable. And I would say, do whatever you want. Of course, having said that,
Yeah.
Tim Cook gets up at 5 a.m. Michelle Obama gets up at 5 a.m. Nelson Mandela got up at 5 a.m. It just goes on and on how many people were early risers. And there is something very powerful about rising when the rest of the world is asleep. And I would also say to anyone who says, well, I don't want to try it. Well, if you're not willing to try something new, you might miss your new favorite food. You might just miss that book that transforms your worldview. You might miss talking to that stranger who doesn't look like you or talk like you or smell like you or sound like you because of your preconceived notion. Steve Jobs said it really well. He said, let's avoid dogma. These are the beliefs that the world has sold us about what is true. And so one of the things I notice when I mentor the exalted performers and the best of the best is people are very open. They're open to a new idea on a new routine. They're open to reading a book that disrupts the game. They're open to visiting a new country. They're open to going to doing a course that ordinarily they'd say, I know all that. The moment you start thinking and saying, I know all that, is the beginning of the end. I was thinking yesterday, the moment people around you say you're amazing, you're in a very dangerous place because you just might think, you're amazing. So to answer your question, monsters for me, well, what I found is as I tame one monster, I realize there are other monsters coming out to play. The moment you get to one mountaintop, what do? You see other mountaintops to climb. I think that's the human journey of healing and personal mastery. When you break through one fear, you realize here's a whole series of other fears to heal. For me, I used to be terrifically afraid of public speaking. Terrified. In front of 5 people, my hands would shake, my mouth would get dry. I was just very, very scared. And so there's a great psychological principle, and it's very powerful. It's easier to change your way of thinking by changing your way of doing than changing your way of thinking to change your way of doing. And what that simply means is when we practice doing the thing that terrifies us, we actually re-hardwire our neural circuitry and our neurobiology to become the people that we want to be. So I just started speaking to 20 people. I was terrified. I couldn't believe it. And then I did it. With that experience came confidence. With experience comes confidence. Spoke to 50 people, 200 people, 300 people, 1,000 people, 40,000 people. So that would be one monster.
Got it. And when you said that, one of the things that you mentioned in the Everyday Hero Manifesto is don't wait till you have confidence to act, because you don't get confidence before action. You get confidence from action, which is kind of what you were saying. Just face the dragon, and interestingly, it tends not to be as big a dragon as you thought it was. And it's a micro win for you to speak in front of 20 people and not have to be carted off to a hospital afterwards. That's when you're afraid of being in front of people, it's that real a thing. So thank you I think people would be shocked to hear that, but because of the fact that you've spoken all over the world, but it was micro win after micro win after micro win in terms of moving up that ladder. So thank you for sharing that. I think there's a lot that people can take from that.
I think where your discomfort lives is where your growth lies. See, what made Kobe is he knew where his discomfort was, and he got up at 3:30 in the morning and he ran towards it. You look at the great heroes of humanity. They did the very thing that frightened them, and they understood that suffering builds strength. The very root of the word passion is to suffer. Kobe, Serena, Jordan, Federer, the great chess champions, the great chefs, they do the things that are difficult because they understand that they must suffer for their craft. The irony is when you understand that suffering is part of the process of greatness, it's a great recipe for happiness.
It was a paradigm shift.
Yes, definitely. So Robin, I want to just go back to the 5 a.m. club, because I think if you are not an avid reader, which I've become an avid reader because of the 5 a.m. club, I've become an early riser because of the 5 a.m. club. And I was like, Greg, my wife actually introduced me to the 5 a.m. club. And it was our first book in our readers club, our book club. And the things that you teach in there, like just those 3 changes to get up, meditate or pray or journal, read diligently every day, and then work out, like those 3 changes in people's lives, like that's a transformation in itself if you just do those 3 simple things. But the reason why I suggest that you pick this book up, because it was written in a story context. And it was a book that you didn't want to put down, because you want to know what happened to the old man. You want to know what happened to the couple that was there on the retreat, at this person's house. And it was just very, very well written, but also there were so many great takeaways out of this book. So if you haven't read the 5 a.m. Club, I suggest that you pick it up, because it's like a fiction book in a nonfiction format. It's a very, very great read. And I learned so much, and it transformed my life. Actually, Greg and I, we joined the 5 a.m. club like 2.5 years ago. And we used to call each other every morning at 5 a.m. to make sure that we were up, just for accountability purposes, because, it's great to say, yeah, I'm in the 5 a.m. club, but are you really in the 5 a.m. club, right? If you don't pick your phone up, you're not in the 5 a.m. club, So it couldn't be a whisper voice, you're laying next to your wife, yeah, I'm up. It had to be, you're out of the bed in the room. So thank you for that book, because it's also a great book. So my next question is, I love how you talk about getting knocked down and getting back up. And I'm interested to know, because a lot of people out there now that see you 27 years later and read your books and hear about your success, thinking, yeah, Robin, he doesn't know what getting knocked down looks like. He's probably never been knocked down. I mean, how does a guy like that ever get knocked down? He's too smart. He's too good at what he does. How have you been knocked down, and how did you get back up, or what helped you to get back up on your feet and say, I'm going to go through this difficult time and grow?
Well, I've been knocked down in personal relationships. I think we all have been. I think I've been knocked down at certain times in business, as we all have been. I think if you're really in the game, you're going to be betrayed by people you trust. I think you are going to face unexpected disappointments. Rumi, the great philosopher, said it beautifully. He said, keep breaking your heart until it opens. And I think the real thing you want to do, and this is something that there are some key chapters in the Everyday Hero Manifesto that speak to this, but you want to exploit failure. Literally, you want to take your pain and allow it to purify you personally. You want to take your difficulties and allow them to crack the ego and the limits that cover you, so you become better at your craft, more open and vulnerable, more loving, more generous, more brave, more creative, more productive. So I've gone through a lot of adversity in my life. I've been in the valleys of darkness. I've been on the top of the mountain. But what I try to do when I'm in that valley of difficulty, I try to use that period. Maybe not as, there's something I talk about in the book. It's, the world might not call those periods when maybe you're going through a tragedy. I've gone through some tragedies in my life. I didn't feel worldly productive. I didn't feel like getting up at 4:30, recording videos, working on a book. I don't know about you two gentlemen, but during those times, you're not as worldly productive. But what I said in the Everyday Hero Manifesto is, you can be very spiritually productive. It is when we are down on our knees that we're closest to our highest selves. It is when we are feeling like we just can't move forward that we pray, that we journal, that we ask ourselves the big questions. How am I living? Who am I? On the last hour of my last day, how will I wish I will have lived? So I've had a lot of difficulty, but what I've tried to do is every single time I get knocked down, how can I use this to make me better? And then there's tactics that I use. Like sometimes if you're having a really bad day, or maybe it's a bad month, or maybe it's a bad year, sometimes a good nap, as simple and funny as it sounds, just take a nap. And then to be really tactical and helpful, journaling I don't have my journal with me now, but I often journal for an hour or two. And during my dark moments or dark seasons, I can spend 3 or 4 hours journaling, and it releases the pain so it doesn't become suppressed and come back to bite you in other ways. So journaling is a very powerful tool. Journaling is prayer on paper. Meditation, incredibly important when you're having a bad day, bad month, bad year, bad decade. Meditation, so much science on the power of meditation. Great podcast called Meditation Oasis. This woman has recorded 20 or 30 podcasts. I don't like the 3-minute ones. I like the 1-hour ones. I want to go deep. So number one would be journaling. I've done a YouTube video on it. It's so powerful. It saved my life. Number 2, meditation. Number 3, prayer. And if you're not religious, that's cool. It's scientific prayer. There's lots of science on the power of prayer. So prayer, every prayer is heard. You want to win in business? Be good at praying. You could simply say praying is intention setting. Intention setting gets you clear on what it is you want to build. 4, nature. When I'm having a really difficult time, I head to the woods and I breathe in the air and I smell the smell. I love autumn. By the way, speaking of words, I don't call autumn autumn. I don't call autumn fall. Falls are bad. I don't want a fall. I want an autumn. So, but in the autumn, I love walking through the woods, but being in nature. The Japanese call it forest bathing, tons of science, what it does to your neurochemistry when you're out in the woods. 5, take a bath. I'm reading this great book by Winston Churchill, The Splendid and the Vile. Guess what he did every day? He soaked in a bathtub. Simple. Go get some Epsom salt, pour it in the bathtub. It'll remove the toxins. It'll allow you to regenerate. 6 or 5, take a nap. And then I'll say it like bonus pro tip for Success Paradigm Nation members. I would say, get a good coach, get a good mentor. Might even be a therapist or a spiritual counselor. Invest in that person once a week. I learned this from Warren Buffett. Don't focus on the cost, focus on the return on the investment. Really important point.
So, Robert, just real quick, one of the things that you said, and I loved in your book, and it made me feel different about my life, is when your journals got stolen. And at first, how you felt like, oh my God, what are people going to find out? And then you transitioned to, there's nothing I have to hide. And like, if you judge me for my personal journal, my personal life, then I really don't have space for you in my life anyway. So I really, and really it's just, you were hitting on not caring so much about what people think and living life for you. And I thank you for that gift that you gave me, because I do live in that space sometimes, being an influencer, being online, my wife being famous. I live in that space of kind of sometimes worrying about what people think. And that kind of just made that vanish for me, of thinking, that's such a great way to look at it. So again, thank you for that gift.
It's funny. Go ahead, Robin.
If I could just reply to it quickly.
Sure.
100 biohackers aside, 100 years from now, we're all going to be a pile of dust.
Yeah, that's another thing in the book.
So why does it matter if someone sees my journals? And by the way, if I may ask the question, who's your wife?
Jimena Duque. She's a Latino actress. She's probably
wow.
So that's why I also have a big Hispanic following. She's got a massive Hispanic following. So
amazing.
So beautiful Colombian woman that I'm so fortunate to have a family with. So yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah. Think Julia Roberts. Yes. Actually, Jimena will probably have me flip that to have Julia Roberts fans think Jimena. It's, when you were talking about that, it's funny that because one of the things about books is that they meet you where you are. Because I actually became a more consistent reader because of the 5 a.m. club, because I was like everybody else. It's like, I don't have time to read. Well, get up earlier. And it was such a simple, it was kind of embarrassing, quite frankly, that, because we talk about all these people that have, I say, I don't have that much time in the day. And then I started listening and understanding, as you did, as you were kind of calling off some of those names, Robin, that these people have the same 24 hours that you have. They're getting up earlier and they are not distracted. It's one of the things, and it sounds weird, maybe not to Robin Sharma, because I think we are weird in a wonderful way, actually, is just watching the sunrise in the morning is a very hopeful thing. And when you get up at 5 a.m., you're not waking up as it's rising. You actually get a chance to see that sun come up over the horizon. And it's like, this happens every single day, which means I have a shot every single day. It's a very spiritual type of thing. The other thing that you were mentioning a minute ago that I just want to, because I stopped, I'm just going to have to go back and look and take notes later. I can't keep up. I'm like, Jay, there's too many things flying at me about having a difficult day or a difficult month, or then you said a difficult year or a difficult decade. And that's interesting that you say that, because I think, no difficulty lasts forever, but some of them last longer than others. And I have daughters that are a little older than Jay's daughters. And one of the things that, I don't know specifically what in your book triggered this, but we were just having this conversation. She's 34. She'll be 34 this summer. Is that one of the things that makes you stronger is understanding that difficulty is always coming. I think when we're younger, we think we're going to get past it and then it'll be done. I have a very good friend that's also my pastor, that always says, another level, another devil. So every time you rise, not only are there monsters up that, the little monsters don't follow you up the ladder because you're no more useful to them. But there's more skilled, they're more devious, they're smarter, they're more tactical. The monsters are bigger the higher you go up the ladder. But when you understand that, it's not as frightening. But when you think there's going to be a rung on the ladder where you're done with it, to your point, then that's when you get harmed, because all of a sudden you're surprised. You should never be surprised by difficulty. You should be embracing it, because that tells you that you're actually moving somewhere. So, question for you after all of that. Thanks for, I'm just kind of spitting out what Robin is pouring into me. Some people get on the train and they're doing the right things. They're doing, they're recognizing and celebrating the micro wins. They've started getting up at 5 a.m. They're starting to get, some exercise in where they're sweating every morning, all those things that you teach. But then they hit a wall. One of the things in the 5 a.m. club, and I don't want to misquote it, but threw away the 21 days makes a habit thing. I think it was 66 days or something that you have to, and that there are these periods that are going to be really difficult, kind of, and that type of thing. But people get stuck sometimes, even on day number 323. So they've been doing it, but then they get stuck. And what does someone do when they get stuck, even though they've been on the right course? They're not where they want to be, and all of a sudden they're just stuck. What do you tell people who feel like they're spinning their wheels, Robin?
I'd say stuck is a part of progress.
Okay.
So I was giving a speech in White River, South Africa, and then I had to get to another place in South Africa. So we were in this little sort of bush plane, and the pilot said, you can take over for a little while. And of course, he was right next to me. And what I noticed is, as I was flying the plane, and he said, you've got to keep, I don't know if it's called the altimeter or whatever it is, but you got to just keep it in center.
Right.
And as I was flying it, I was constantly fighting the winds, the currents, and I had to bring it back. And then I went off and I bring it back and I went off. And that's every day for every human being. There's no person who gets it right every second. The very nature of the human condition is we're on track and then we get off track. So what I would say is we all get stuck. We all lose our inspiration. We all feel like giving up. We all get depleted. We all feel tired. We all hit a wall. The key is don't stay against the wall, right? The Japanese say it beautifully. They say get knocked down 7 times, get up 8. And it's remarkable how far you can get when you refuse to lose and you just stay in the ring longer than the world says that you should stay in the ring. So we feel stuck. Use some of the tactics I talk about in the Everyday Hero Manifesto. There's literally hundreds of ideas and there's all those models, and it's a very inspirational book. It's a very tactical book. And so you use those ideas. Even there's the Trinity of Radiant Vitality. There's the peak productivity pyramid strategies. Use those strategies. Like a lot of people, and I say this with great respect, but they want the rewards of world class, but they're not willing to do what world class requires. The ideas are out there. I've written about so many of the tactics. How do you get unstuck? How do you stay inspired? How do you turn your wounds into wisdom and your stumbling blocks into stepping stones? But then we have these stories. I hear sometimes people say, oh, another one of those self-help books. Well, that's an interesting belief system. Some are good, some are bad, just like fiction books, just like restaurants. But it's a story. Self-help books, I'm in the real world. Self-help books, personal growth books, a great one helps people live possibility. It shares science, it shares philosophy, it shares modalities that help you deal with difficulty. But if someone has a, self-help book, I'm in the real world, that kind of a story, then you're not going to read the right self-help book that will inspire you and touch your heart and then give you the strategies that will help you build better days that become a great life.
You may not read it all, actually, if you think that's the case, because why would you?
So, hey, Robin, I have one more question before I recap all of your ingredients for success. And I really appreciate you sharing all this with us today. But this is more of a selfish, self-centered question. So, the 5 a.m. club, when I talk to people about getting up at 5 a.m., the first thing that they assume is that I don't sleep. And one of the things that's always been important in my life is sleep. And a lot of people say I look younger than I am. I'm 48, and they say that I look younger than I am, but I feel like a big part of that is because I sleep 7 to 8 hours every single night. It's like the number one thing in my life besides meditation, reading, and working out. Sleep is at the top. And I'm interested from you, because I do see you as a guru. I know gurus don't call themselves gurus, but I think there's going to be a lot of people after listening to this and reading your books that believe that you are some sort of guru. And there are gurus that walk around, and I think you're one of them. What is your take on sleep? I know waking up at 5 a.m. and doing all these things while you're awake, but what is your sleep habits? What do you believe about sleep? What have you researched about sleep? What should be people, do you think they should be focused on when they sleep?
It's a great question. Well, the science says the primary factor to shorten your life is to reduce your sleep. And, assumptions are really dangerous. People, we make an assumption, oh, that person is going to say no, so we don't ask for the order, don't ask for the date, don't ask for what we want. So people have an assumption, oh, we've heard about the book, the 5 a.m. club. We've heard of people are members of the club, and it's grown into this movement, but I think sleep is important, so I won't join the club. There's actually an entire chapter in the 5 a.m. club called The Essentialness of Sleep. And in it, I say sleep is not a luxury, sleep is a necessity. And there's actually in And I write a lot about it in the Everyday Hero Manifesto. I get very deep into what the world's most productive people do. And you know what they are? They are professional resters. There's an idea I talk about in the Everyday Hero Manifesto, the 5 great hour rule. Only work 5 hours, then rest, have fun, enjoy, recreation, regeneration for the rest of the time. So what I'm suggesting is the most productive people don't work very much, but when they work very intensely. And to give credit to the Energy Project, who's done a lot of research on this, the most productive people, they're more like sprinters than marathoners. So it's not linear hustle and grind. I don't believe in all that stuff. It's when you work 5 hours a day, I believe, the 5 great hour rule, work incredibly deeply, and then rest really well. Active rest or sleep. And that will allow you to have the energy, the cognitive bandwidth, the productivity, the inspiration, and to look good like you two gentlemen look so good and look so young, because rest is really important. And so tactics for rest: don't use your screen an hour before sleep, good sleep hygiene, sleep in a cool room, a dark room. I have this white noise machine I use. It's really very powerful. I have an eye mask. I often take a bath before I go to sleep. I don't watch the news before I go to sleep. I don't watch the news very much. I exercise twice a day. There's the 5 a.m. club workout that I talk about in that book, the 20-20-20 formula, and then the second wind workout. I go for a walk later in the day. And those things come together to give me generally a very sound sleep.
And so how much do you sleep? I'm interested. How much at night do you sleep?
Well, it depends on what cycle I'm in. So if I've been working very intensely for, let's say, 6 months, for example, I often take the summers off. I'll sleep more than usual. So your body is incredibly wise. I eat what feels good in my body, and I rest when my body needs rest. But generally, when I'm up early, doing the 20-20-20 formula of the 5 a.m. club, fasting as I love to do, doing the two second wind workout, doing the 2 massage protocol, all of these modalities, I don't need a lot of sleep. I go down at maybe 11 o'clock and then I'm up at 4:30.
Oh, wow.
But my secret weapon, I must confess, is since I was about 20, I nap. And I learned this from my dad. Yeah, you nap?
Absolutely.
When do you sleep, Greg? When do you nap?
I usually nap around right after that 5 intensive hours that you're talking about, usually around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's because I can feel myself being mentally and physically tired. And it's funny because I get a lot of shade for taking naps, not from Jay, of course. Wink,
No,
wink, nudge, nudge.
I don't nap. I meditate. I meditate in the middle afternoon.
Yeah.
So for 20 minutes, I meditate in the morning and meditate in the afternoon. So that's kind of my nap, because my wife calls it my nap because she's always like, you kind of fall asleep. And I'm like, well, sometimes I might fall asleep, but that's when I take my and then I have a cup of coffee after that. And usually I'm just productive for the next 3 hours.
It makes a world of difference. It makes a world of difference because I wake up invigorated to be able to do the other stuff, like to really engage with my family or really get on a FaceTime call with my grandchildren. So by the way, that walk normally comes after that nap, which is interesting because some people think I wouldn't nap after the walk, but the nap is for me, the walk is for me. So all of the stuff that's for me happens after the nap, because I want that to have its due amount of energy as well.
If you look at Winston Churchill, he used to love inviting his cabinet and his friends and his advisors to Chequers. I think it's the official residence of the Prime Minister of England. And he would start the meal and he was very quiet. Then he would get into the champagne, he would get into the whiskey, he would get into the cigars, and it'd be 2 a.m. and he was like full of energy. And one of his chief advisors, I believe it was Lord Beaverbrook, said, we just can't keep up with him. And he was asked about it. And he said, yeah, because I take naps. So naps, I mean, I can't believe you're a grandfather, if I heard you correctly. And
Yeah.
Jay, you're right, you look so young. So, maybe it's napping or the meditation, but these things really do work.
They do. And I would tell you the other gift that you gave me is when you were talking about the 5-hour workday, but not only that, you also talked about being present when you're on vacation and being in the vacation. And in 30 years that I've been working, I've never done that. I've always been on my phone. I've always been working. And reading your book, I went to Hawaii with my wife for our 5th anniversary. And I didn't take my computer, which was the first time ever that I didn't travel with my laptop, iPad. The only thing I had was my phone. And I didn't feel guilty because of what you wrote in that book about how that's going. And I came out of vacation feeling inspired, motivated, lots of drive to accomplish, all the things that are on my list. So another gift, and there's just so many gifts in the book for anybody's listening. Like even, I tell people when it comes to reading, I know you have the 20-20-20 rule, but if you just start off, if you're not a reader, if you just start off with reading 7 pages of a book a day, that you'll read almost a book a month. If you read 15 pages, you can read a book in 3 weeks. And it's just doing those little habits and digesting those things. And that's what I've learned from you is just, and now I can't do it. I cannot not do it. I have to read every single day. It's kind of like it's fuel for my soul and having that conversation with authors. So I'm excited for your next book. I'm sure you're working on it now. My wife and I love all of your work and all of our people in our club. They're all going to listen to this. They're all excited to do this because the timing of this could not be more perfect. Actually, you reached out when I was in Hawaii and I was like, that's a week after we finished this book. That's awesome. That's amazing. Yeah. So it was great. So to wrap this up, I just want to go over the ingredients for success from Robin Sharma, which there were so many. The first one is work very hard and focused. Leaders shine light on gifts and talents. What's the point of being successful if you don't even like yourself? If you're not failing a lot, you're not doing a lot. Discomfort of growth is less dangerous than the illusion of safety. Let me just make sure because I was writing so fast. Doing difficult things lead to an easy life. The chatter of ego will always keep you small. Masters always act as beginners, as white belts. The key to legendary is longevity. Michael Jordan, the greats that you mentioned. The power of words. Make a simple choice not to be a victim. Awareness precedes transformation. I call successful people lucky. You shouldn't do that. Give any power to your past. A great life equals a micro win at a time. Great life is not a revolution. World class is what you do every single day. Be unreasonable with yourself. As you tame one monster, another one will come. Easier to change your way of thinking than the ego of doing, I think. Can't read my writing. Sorry about that. Is that right, Robin? You can correct me if I'm wrong.
It's a prescription. He's like a doctor.
Yeah. No, there's so much information. I just couldn't write fast enough. Experience comes with confidence. Suffering builds strength. Keep breaking your heart until it opens. Exploit failure. Let difficulties crack your ego. When you are on your knees is when you're closest to yourself. You talked about the 5 things: meditation, journaling, praying, is intention setting, which was a huge takeaway from me because I don't pray.
Right.
So that is a big one. Thank you so much for that. Nature, take a bath, nap. And I think the biggest one that you didn't hit on as much is get a coach. I think that's so freaking important. An accountability partner, someone that will call you on your stuff and tell you what you need to work on. Stuck is part of progress. No person gets it right every second, which is so good. It's so good because we do put people up and think they just get it right all the time. And most of the time they don't. That reminded me I'm getting golf lessons. I've always wanted to be good at golf, and it's just something that helps me mentally, and it's a mental health thing. And my coach told me that 80% of the professional shots are a miss. And just to think about that, when you're watching on TV, it's like, television is great when you're watching golf because they show you the best shots. They don't show you all the bad shots. And, that's life. Like 80% of what we do is a miss, only 20% of it's great, typically, or maybe sometimes less. So that was a great one. Don't stay against the wall, which to end with, I just would hope that everyone that listened to Robin today would take some of these words of advice and just start to create those habits. And please give yourself 2 gifts. Pick up the 5 a.m. Club and the Everyday Hero Manifesto. And I promise you, once you read it, pay that book forward, because I will tell you, Greg and I, that book changed both of our lives. And I just want to thank you sincerely, Robin, for one, taking the time to come on here and impact our listeners. And the thing that I want to end with is this. I have invited multiple authors on here. We've had 3 to come on here, and you're one of them. And the authors that I invite on here speak a very big game about wanting to help people and impact people and change the world. But when you invite them to come on and spend an hour of their time to share their message with people, they don't like you. And I would tell you, not only are you a good author, but you're a good person, because I messaged you on Instagram and you and I had a conversation back and forth immediately. And you said that you would make this happen, and you did. So not only are you a great author in what you write, but you actually live what you write. And I think that's why people need to pick up your book, because you're not just an author that's writing something to sell books. You're truly writing content to change lives. And I really, really appreciate you as a human being for that.
Yep. And if I could just, with 20 seconds, say, we talked much earlier about when your journal was taken and the struggle around, what will they think of me? After reading some of your other stuff, Robin, that's not the first thought I had, believe it or not. The first thought I had was, this is the universe gifting this person or persons that took this journal, and that they didn't know it, but the gift was going to be that they were going to be able to see how they could actually live their lives as well. I don't know what their initial intention might have been, but the first thought I had when I read that was, they were going to be blessed by reading that journal, because otherwise they may not have taken that same journey in terms of understanding. So I think everything happens for a reason. I think we are blessed to have you join us today, as are the folks at the nation of Success Paradigm watchers and viewers. Thank you for being here. It means a lot to a lot of people, and Jay and I included.
Hope I've been helpful, and really it was a true pleasure to be with you, Greg, and with you, Jay. And thank you so much for your more than generous words.
Thank you, Robin. We appreciate your time. Have a wonderful day.